Well, happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to recommend some movies sort of based on the holiday because, Thanksgiving, we all come together, we eat together. But for a lot of us, Thanksgiving means dysfunctional family. A lot of people out there deal with dysfunctional families or family dynamics where people just don't necessarily mesh together very well. And I feel like whenever we talk about Thanksgiving or Christmas, there's so much kind of anxiety surrounding these holidays and getting together with people that they might be your family, but you don't necessarily get along. And cinema has been very reflective of that through the years. There have been so many movies about dysfunctional family dynamics and how certain families operate. And so I thought today I would give you a list of some of my favorite films that involve dysfunctional families. And I'm excited to tell you about some of them today. So up first, let's talk about one of the best, and that's Ari Aster's Hereditary. Is there a more dysfunctional family than the family in this film? I'm not 100% sure, but it's pretty brutal, and I love this movie quite a bit. I think Ari Aster is a phenomenal director, and I've talked about this movie a million times on my channel, so I won't go into a ton of detail, but obviously, phenomenal performances. I think Toni Collette was snubbed of her Oscar nomination. The cinematography in this is breathtaking. There are some amazing shot sequences in this that I will never purge from my brain. One of the most beautiful film scores of all time. Just so many incredible things going for it. But what's this about? Dysfunctional family. And what I love about this is the family dynamics in this, despite the supernatural way the movie goes, they feel very real. This is a family that is plagued by death. A death occurs in the family. It impacts the relationship between the family members. Another death occurs and it impacts them even more. And as someone who has lost a lot of family members to cancer and traumatic events in my life, they depict it in a way that feels real. People get heated, people get in arguments, things flare up, people process grief in very different ways. And no person's processing of their internal grief is ever going to be the same. And because of that, conflict will occur. If you feel like someone's not moving past something fast enough, or not taking enough time to kind of let it sit with you, there can be conflict that arises. And I think the way Ari Aster approaches it in this movie is honestly brilliant. There are so many scenes that just stick out in my mind. I think that scene where Toni Collette just loses it at the dining room table, it's brilliant. I really love the way that it's handled. And I think despite it being a really phenomenal horror movie that does a great job kind of building that dread and tension and suspense, the familial dynamics are what make the movie so impactful. The arguments and the real life reality of the situation combined with the more absurd supernatural elements towards the third act of the film, they combine to create something so incredibly impactful. And horror has always been a really great reflection of pain and suffering and dealing with issues in your own life. And I think Ari Aster just created a masterpiece with this one. It's a movie that I never am not thinking about, and I always look forward to rewatching it. Up next is a film that actually takes place during Thanksgiving, and that is the film Krisha. This is Trey Edward Schultz's debut. It was produced by A24, and I think it is brilliant. I don't think a lot of people talk about this movie very much, but it's fantastic. Krisha Fairchild is phenomenal in this movie. She gives such a dedicated and realistic performance as this person who's coming back home to visit her family and her estranged son that she's hardly seen or hardly been a part of his life because of things that have occurred in her own life. And once again, similar to what I discussed with Hereditary, this movie is beautifully shot. It has incredible performances. The utilization of sound design in this almost creates a nauseatingly anxious feeling for you as a viewer. There's a great ticking clock element where she's given the responsibility to put the turkey in the oven, and you're constantly hearing that turkey timer in the background. And with all of the other conflict occurring around, it really just makes you feel sick. And I think Trey Edward Schultz does a brilliant job at showcasing the anxiety and the tension that exists between family members who are estranged coming together for a holiday where normally you feel like you have to put on some kind of face. People think you need to act a certain way or react a specific way. And I love that about this movie. I think it's handled really brilliantly. You don't have a ton of movies set on Thanksgiving, but I think the way that it's incorporated really helps all that emotional payoff work even better. This is a film in A24's catalog I feel like is very slept on. If you've never seen it before, please do yourself a favor and watch it. It's brilliant. Up next, one of my other favorite movies of all time, and that's Robert Eggers' The Witch. I've gone 3 A24 movies here, I know, but I love their catalog. They have a lot of great stuff. But Robert Eggers filmmakers, one of my favorite filmmakers working right now. And this is dysfunctional family, probably in the worst sense imaginable. So much so that like your religious upbringing is causing turmoil based on a witch's actions, and the family starts tearing itself apart internally. What I love so much about this movie, it's so unconventional for a horror film because it's not necessarily something jumping out at you every 5 seconds. This movie is creating overwhelming anxiety for you as a viewer, just thinking of what's going to happen to these characters. And I love the way that little things are introduced that create more and more tension. It starts off as just the littlest thing, and it just gets worse and worse and worse as the movie goes on, to the point where they literally want to kill each other. And I think that that's just phenomenal filmmaking. This is obviously when America, very new place, we just have people coming in. They're just settling in areas, discovering new parts of the U.S. And this family has been a part of this group. The father does not like the way that they're teaching religion, and he says, "I'm taking my family out," and moves them into the woods where there's no one around. And it's like you have no sense of society, you have no sense of people around you, and just chaos ensues. And that's what I love so much about it. And obviously the performances in this, Anya Taylor-Joy, one of my favorite working actresses right now. This is one of her earliest roles. She is phenomenal in it. The young kids in this and how they nail the dialect in the movie is phenomenal. Everyone involved is just great. It's beautifully shot. There are so many haunting images in this movie. But I think the core of this is the dysfunctional family and the arguments that ensue, and kind of the different things planted in people's heads that causes family members to turn against one another. I just think it is a brilliant work of art. If you've never seen The Witch before, it's one of my favorite films in the past like 20 years, and I'm just going to grow to love it more over time. Up next is Thomas Vinterberg's The Celebration. This movie is a lot, and I'm going to tell you right now, if you've never seen this movie before, it is heavy, it is depressing. It's Thomas Vinterberg. I mean, this guy, he loves to cover the saddest, most deranged parts of the human brain, and I don't want to give too much away about this movie other than it's a family coming back together for the father's birthday. I can't remember how old he's turning, and one of the kids has something to reveal to the family about the brother, or about the father. It is disheartening, it's heart-shattering, it has some of the most brilliant performances I've seen in a movie, period. This is shot in the Dogma 95 style, which, if you're unfamiliar with that, Vinterberg and Lars von Trier back in the 90s established this filmmaking style called Dogma 95, which essentially they were required to shoot with handheld camera. They weren't allowed to use a ton of fancy equipment. They had to utilize natural lighting. There's all this different set of rules that was created as to how these films are presented. So they're very rough around the edges, but I think it works to their benefit. Another really great example is Lars von Trier's Dancer in the Dark. But what I like about those movies is because they're really rough around the edges, it causes the emotional core of the films to really pay off even more. And this movie is hard hitting. It's incredible. There's a lot of personal family dynamics that are showcased throughout the movie with different characters. There are a lot of characters, but I don't feel like any of them get glazed over. Every single person gets their time to shine. They get to showcase why they're in the movie and what makes them important. And it's just an emotional roller coaster ride that I think showcases why Vinterberg is a genius. Over the years, he's become one of my favorite directors. I haven't seen his whole catalog, but between this, The Hunt, and Another Round, he's just a phenomenal filmmaker that I feel like is incapable of missing. And this is one of his early works that I think is 100% worth your time watching. Up next is another slept-on gem, and that is Mike Mills' 20th Century Woman. This is dysfunctional family in a way that's a little bit less chaotic. This is a mother who seemingly has the best intentions for her son, but doesn't necessarily know the best way to approach it. And so because of that, she takes upon two younger women to try to help bring her son into adulthood. The father is obviously not around anymore, but this is a story of a mother who has genuine love for her child, but doesn't necessarily know how to approach being that parent in the best way possible. And that's what I love about this. It's not necessarily dysfunctional family in the most chaotic way. It's dysfunctional family in they work sort of, but there are things that need to be worked out with the family as well. This is a performance-driven masterpiece. Every actor in this delivers 110%. content, and they do it brilliantly. I feel like all of the relationships are incredibly natural. Mike Mills has such a unique way of filming, and I love just how natural everything feels. He's a documentarian, so whenever he films a narrative feature, it always feels very realistic, which is why I respect him as a filmmaker so much. And this is a movie that moves me to tears every time I watch it. I just think it is a masterpiece. I don't really have any other word for it. It's a movie I'm constantly thinking about, one of my favorite films in A24's catalog, and if you've never seen it before, please go watch it. Next is Paris, Texas from director Wim Wenders. This movie is a masterpiece. This is a movie about a man played by Harry Dean Stanton who is wandering around the desert, and we start to learn more and more about his family and about his estranged partner and about his young son. And it is one of the most beautiful, heart-wrenching, depressing movies that I've ever seen in my life. Wim Wenders is also a genius. One of the most beautifully shot films. Harry Dean Stanton's performance is phenomenally understated. I feel like, especially considering the first half hour of the movie, he doesn't really speak a line of dialogue, and there's so much emotion in his face. He is a deeply flawed character, as we learn throughout the runtime of the movie. He is not a perfect person. He's done a lot of bad things in his life, but he's trying to be better, and he tries to make amends for the mistakes of his actions. And I think that there's really beautiful messaging in this movie. It's truly remarkable. I think it's one of those movies, the blinder you go into it, the better. It's just going to hit you like a brick wall when you watch it. And I saw this for the first time a couple years ago. It became one of my favorite films of all time almost instantly. And I will recommend this movie to everyone I meet because I think it is must-watch cinema. Up next is Noah Baumbach's Marriage Story. As a child of divorce, this movie hit me very hard. I love Noah Baumbach. I think the way that he writes dialogue is brilliant. This is obviously a movie about a couple who at the beginning of the movie, seemingly happy and normal, things break apart. They start to have a divorce that they feel like is relatively cordial, and things get worse and worse and worse as time goes on. And I think this movie accurately depicts how difficult divorce can be, even if you go into it with the best of intentions. When lawyers get involved, when people start to make decisions for you, when there's external influence, it becomes a mess. And I think this movie does it brilliantly. I cried for like 20 minutes in the theater after this movie was over. It literally hit me so hard thinking about what I'd witnessed with my parents' divorce in my life and just how that went and how much it rocked the entire family and just the way people turn against each other. And I just thought the way Noah Baumbach handled it was brilliant. I think the performances from Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson are nothing short of incredible. The way they interact on screen, the monologues that they deliver, they're both just truly incredible actors. And this is a movie that I think about quite often. It's one I always look forward to revisiting, and if you've never seen it before, it's incredible. I don't want to go for too long today, so I'll give you one more. This is the most dysfunctional family of all time, and this is Yorgos Lanthimos' Dogtooth, a film about a man who tells his children that they can never leave their house, that the cat that roams around outside of their house is actually a creature that will murder them, and the only way that they will ever be able to leave their house is by losing their dog tooth. This movie is hilarious, but it's also darkly demented. This movie will make you laugh really hard and cringe within the span of 20 seconds. It's what makes Yorgos Lanthimos a genius. Beautiful cinematography, incredible use of score, and it's something that just keeps you on the edge of your seat. And what I like so much about this movie is it kind of takes family dynamics to the extreme, where it's like, what if a parent wanted to control everything about their child's life to the point where they don't even want them to be exposed to the outside world? They're completely against it. They just want them to interact with each other, and they want to live in this isolated environment that they've created. And I think that's a horrifying idea, but it's also fascinating. And I love the way Yorgos executes it, because it, like in most of his movies depicting controversial ideology, it ends in a bad way. It's like, no, you don't want to have this level of control over your kids. You want your kids to have freedom of education and to learn and to grow as people individually, because otherwise something like this happens. And I love that about this movie. I think Yorgos is a genius, one of the greatest directors working today. If you've never seen this movie, please watch it immediately. It's incredible. So, what are some of your favorite movies about dysfunctional families? Let me know in the comments. These are obviously just some of mine. I could go on and on and on, but I'm really glad I got to share some of them with you today. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.